Okay, Fran, you can go.
Good evening, persisters and guests. My name is Francine Julius Edwards. I am the first vice president of the Democratic Women's Club of Florida. We are giving regrets come from our president, Mary Forte Namouge, as she is out of town. We welcome you to embracing and empowering millennials and Gen Z. I wanted the Democratic Women's Club to bring together young female progressive minds to converse with our members, and I want to thank both past and present presidents for giving us these young women to the time to share how they will create that synergy. And we'd like to introduce at this time Jessica Ransom, our training coordinator. Jessica?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We, like as Francine, our first vice president, said, we welcome you to this exciting, embracing, empowering millennials and Gen Z webinar. This was a webinar that was presented at our convention this year, and it was one of the highest attended and highest rated webinars. So we are really looking forward to these ladies sharing this information with you tonight. The runner show for tonight will be that our speakers will speak, and at the end of the presentation, there will be a Q&A portion where you will be able to ask questions. We're asking that you please be sure to use the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. Do not use the chat button. The caveat is we had some issues last time with the Q&A portion, but we'll see how it goes tonight. If there's an issue, we will redirect you with how to get your questions in. Gwen Skafransky, who is a member of the training committee, she will walk us through the Q&A portion after the last presenter has completed. So now I'm going to turn this back to Francine, who is currently the DWCF first VP. She was elected. Do we need to do that, Fran?
No.
Okay, sorry, because we already did it. So at this time, I'm gonna ask Francine to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Jessica. Danielle Hawk. During the 2022 election, Danielle secured the Democratic nomination for Congress's 3rd District by a margin of more than 30 points and laid the groundwork for progressive values to prevail. While running for office, Danielle's championed uplifting our hardworking families, guaranteeing justice for all, and defending our democratic freedoms. Since her campaign concluded, she has served as the outreach chair of the Alachua County Democratic Party, the vice president of the Alachua County Young Dems, and an active volunteer for Moms Demand Action, a gun safety Moms Demand Action, a gun safety advocacy organization. As a campaign chair of the Florida Democratic Party, Danielle is committed to ensuring Democrats are competing everywhere in Florida and empowering candidates and up and down the ballot. Brittany Hodson. Brittany currently serves as the Democratic Women's Club of Florida interim chair, Region 13, which includes Broward, Dade, Monroe counties, after serving as the president of the Democratic Women's Club of East Broward. Throughout the 2022 election season, she organized locally, knocked on doors, and collaborated with a variety of allied organizations from the Blue Wave Coalition to the Broward Democratic Party. Rhea Manier is a senior at Trinity Prep School in Winter Park. She is the chair of the Florida High School Democrats, a chapter of High School Democrats of America, and the official high school caucus of the Florida Democratic Party. She also leads the Democratic Party as the vice chair of its new Youth Council, a group of 45 statewide youth leaders working to increase and develop youth involvement in the state. She holds the state record for the youngest member in FDP history as a member of the Resolutions Committee. She is also the director of policy at Voters of Tomorrow, Florida, where she writes Gen Z-focused policy proposals and alongside a team of high schoolers and college students, an intern in the office of State Representative Anna Escamani. She is passionate about Democratic youth involvement, grassroots organizing, and giving young people tools they need to organize and create change. And she looks forward to attending a college where she can continue her organizing work into the future. Rhea, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Rhea, and I'm here to talk a little bit about what Gen Z and millennial involvement is going to look like in the future. Next slide. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so first, I think it's really important that we set definitions of what Gen Z is and who they are. So the age range is going to look from 1997 to 2013. They are one of the most diverse generations in all of history. That's socially, that's politically across the spectrum, racially, gender identity, etc. Gen Z is also one of the most active and politicized generations that have really engaged in social movements we've seen throughout the pandemic with the Black Lives Matter movement, and now again, especially in Florida, as educational attacks from the GOP keep increasing. A really formative experience for all of us was the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. This had a massive effect on Gen Z in terms of how we communicated with one another, in terms of everything became 10 times more digital. It affected our school, our education, and almost none of us had a childhood without access to the internet or digital devices. So Gen Z is extremely technologically and digitally able and fluent. Next slide, please.
And on to millennials. So I am an older millennial. So this is what a millennial looks like. We were born from 1981 to 1996, which would make us between age 27 and 42 today. So some of our formative experiences would be 9/11 and the subsequent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the 2008 market crash and financial crisis. We came of age and entered the workforce during one of the worst economic recessions in our lifetimes. Well, at least our current lifetimes. Unlike Gen Z, where they always have had technology, we had to adapt to it as we were growing up. So I have one of the original Facebook accounts that I had to sign up for with a .edu email, if anybody remembers that. I also used to have a MySpace. I had a cell phone when I was in high school, but also always wanted a beeper. So I'm going to date myself, but I'm 38 today. So that was me when I was in high school. And also in college, we used to IM. So it's just setting up we had to adapt and change as things happened. We were there when social media started, and whereas it's second nature to Gen Z. So right now, a lot of us are focused on having kids and having a family, ages 27 to 42. So these are some of the things that are going on in our lives. We also have a lot of student loans. Perhaps some of the other generations haven't had to deal with them in the same way, in the same capacity that we have. Recently, obviously, we were born beginning in 1981 when, we always had these reproductive rights. I grew up and went throughout my whole life with things that you all have fought for. It's not that we take it for granted, but I have always had these rights, and now they're suddenly getting taken away. So we're all very passionate about this as well. And I also wanted to make sure that I said, there's going to be a couple screens here. I'm going to move through them really quickly with some graphs to talk about millennial voting and the diversity, because we were the most diverse generation up until when Gen Z came along, and they're more diverse than us now. Thanks, Rhea. So this data and these screens are from 2022 from exit polling and from Brookings. So it's new information for anyone who's visually inclined, or this is just some of the generations defined, including now Gen Z. Sometimes they're called plurals. So baby boomers grew up as television expanded dramatically. Gen X grew up as computer revolution was taking hold. Okay, next. You can see some very obvious blue lines here, right? Right in the middle, we have African Americans, overwhelmingly Democratic advantage. Next screen. America's youngest generations voted overwhelmingly Democratic for Congress in the 2022 midterm elections. So on the left, you can see all the blue, 77% of Gen Z and 56% of millennials voted for Democrats for Congress. Next slide. America's, Democratic advantage among young voters is true among key racial and ethnic groups. So we still do have an advantage with white voters between 18 and 29, so that's Gen Z. But you can see with African American Gen Z, 89% Democrats, and 30 to 34, which is mostly millennials, same thing, 82%. Same with Hispanic, 68% and 60% Hispanic. I mean, this is just for visual people, and also the data shows that the advantages among, we have an advantage with Democrats, with the young voters and the most diverse young voters. So next slide. Young female voters, mostly Democrats. You can see that on the left with Gen Z and millennial white voters. Getting close there with us millennials though. And same thing again with Hispanic and African American. Next slide. Finally, we all have some things in common. Democrats are broadly united across what we believe. So these are just three things. America's openness being essential, 87%, 84%. That this is amongst Gen Z and millennial voters, between the differences between Democrats and Republicans. White people have advantages. Yes, we all agree. Women have obstacles. And I don't think that these statements are pretty salacious. So, you know, we have a lot in common, ladies. Next one.
We're going to talk a little bit about voting habits and what that looks like across generations. It's no secret that in 2024, the youth vote is going to be extremely important to any hope of a Democratic win here in Florida or across the nation. Back in the 2022 midterms, 27% of young voters, and when I say young voters, we define that as ages 18 to 29. But really, in terms of Democratic engagement, I define young as 14 to 35, but 14-year-olds can't vote. So 27% of young voters had the second highest, in the 22 midterms, we had the second highest youth voter turnout rate in a midterm election within the past 30 years, which was actually shown to stop the red wave and shifted the tide in that momentum to the Democrats. And Florida was ranked in the top 10 states to have had the greatest youth impact on the Senate and gubernatorial elections. Young people saved the midterms because of the work of young organizers, and this is only going to increase in the future. By 2024, Gen Z and millennial voters will account for nearly 40% of votes in the next election. That means that youth engagement is something that is very, very real and needs to happen now. Next slide.
All right, so I am, since everybody's wondering, I am on the young side of millennial, maybe an honorary Gen Z if they would give me the title. But before we start explaining the importance of why we need to be embracing young people as a club, I do want to admit that many people who are our age do not respect the experience and wisdom of those who have come before us. And I know that there have been, I want to acknowledge that there have been experiences that maybe even some of you have had where young people can be dismissive of your contributions. We aren't patient with you. We don't see the value in learning from you, those of you who have been doing this for so long. However, we recognize why that is so important, learning from all of you, and why it is so important that we are all collaborating and working together. So as you have heard from both Brittany and Rhea, these two generations are very highly politically engaged for their age, Gen Z especially. And so we have a couple of questions that we need to be asking ourselves, which is kind of what we're going to try to answer a little bit. And we're going to talk about solutions to these questions. So the first is, if young people are so politically engaged, why are they not a part of some of our democratic organizations, like the Democratic Women's Club, for instance? The second question is, why are they not members of the Democratic Women's Club? I think that we all know and can recognize, even just looking in our own individual clubs, that there is a significant age gap. And then the third thing is, what can we do to invite them to join us in the Democratic Women's Club? And I want to suggest that the lack of young members that we have in the Democratic Women's Club is actually symptomatic of what has happened in our state party at large, and I would even argue in our National Democratic Party. In the past, our state party's relationship with young people has been far too transactional. A lot of young people feel like Democrats only show up when they need our votes, and then they forget everything that they have promised us during election season. And the consequences of that end up being that too many young people have tuned out of politics, and they do not know that, for instance, our President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have the most progressive administration in at least the last 50 years. And that's incredibly crucial information for them to know. The second consequence is that Florida, while we saw national turnout numbers that were record-breaking for young people, we actually saw record low youth turnout in some places in Florida in 2022. They were far below the national numbers. And that was because our state party had failed to communicate and mobilize young voters. And then the third consequence is that while young people already know why they shouldn't vote for Republicans, they don't know why they should bother showing up and voting for Democrats. So Democrats have clearly lost the trust of some young people, and especially young Floridians. And that's why we're seeing such a lack of engagement, and not just at our club level, but at the state party level as well. And if we keep heading down this path, things will get worse. We will have another 2022, but I'm really hopeful that we have done some incredible things, having discussions like the one we're having tonight, having incredible student leaders like Rhea on the state party's first ever youth council. All of those are really important steps to ensuring that while we are admitting our mistakes and where we have went wrong in the past, we are now correcting our course for the future. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. We're recognizing, hey, we don't have as many young people at the table in the Democratic Women's Club as we would like. And here's what we can do to fix that. And, you know, as Democrats, our party is supposed to be a big tent. And that big tent is supposed to reflect the vibrant diversity of our country. And we are all on the same team. We are fighting for equality and equity and opportunity. And that is central to who we are as Democrats. And I believe that the fate of our party and the fate and the future of our clubs and caucuses like the Democratic Women's Club, the fate lies with engaging young people. And that starts with making space for just a few young people like y'all have done here tonight. And I promise you that more young people will follow. There is a lot of power in seeing people who look, talk, and see the world in the same way that you do. So when young people see their friends knocking doors or going to Democratic Women's Club meetings or events, walking side by side with older generations, it becomes easier for them to envision how they could do the same. And I also want to preface that doing this work, making space for young people, collaborating in this generational area, it can be very uncomfortable. And it is going to require your clubs and your leadership to make some changes, to be open-minded about the kinds of changes that you're going to need to make. And it will require that you empower young people. And being inclusive always requires that you are uncomfortable, but the work is always worth it. So I'm doing both speaking and changing this PowerPoint, so bear with me here. So we have a two-part presentation, right? Our title is Embracing and Empowering. So we're going to break that down. And the first part is embracing. And you'll see the definition on your screen is accepting and supporting someone, but also doing that willingly and enthusiastically. There's two parts to that. So a really easy way to accept and support young people is to become conscious of your language that could be unintentionally off-putting. And I want to be really clear that I know that many of you, none of you ever are trying to be hateful towards anyone based on their identity. You all have very good intentions. And the work that we're proposing is simply about just aligning our democratic values with our actions and our words. So I want to give you two examples of how, as a club, we could be more inclusive and accepting with our language. So first of all, millennials and Gen Z are more likely to reject gender norms and are more likely than older generations to identify as LGBTQIA. By normalizing using pronouns and introducing yourself with pronouns, your club can foster a space where more people are supported and accepted as their true selves. For instance, when you are introducing yourself at a meeting, maybe you're the president of your club, you should say, "Hi, my name is Danielle Hawk and my pronouns are she, her." Maybe everybody else in the room knows what your pronouns are, but you just made it a safe space for somebody who may have pronouns that you might not assign to them, that they are able to have a safe space where they can say their pronouns and know that those will be respected, and that you have the intention of using the pronouns that they have asked you to use. And another really easy thing is that we write pronouns on name tags. We put our pronouns in our email signatures. We add them to our membership forms. Even when we're having convention, having our pronouns printed on our name tags. And another example of how you can be conscious about the words that you use is how we speak about significant others. For instance, if your club puts "husbands welcome" on your potluck fundraiser invitation, that could make unmarried members, and maybe those who are not in a relationship with a man, feel uncomfortable bringing their partner or feel uncomfortable coming alone. And so if your intention is to encourage a +1, you want people to bring other people, perhaps instead of saying "bring your husbands," you could try saying something like "bring a loved one" instead.
Technology. Gwen, you're a technology expert. We all are. We're becoming more technologically conscious. We must. So young people, I mean, of course, we are not always the technology experts, nor should we be the only one being relied upon for technology in our clubs. But a lot of young people are very used to engaging with technology, as we've discussed. So I would just encourage everyone even if they're uncomfortable, is to just keep it simple if you don't have a large online presence, or if you're a smaller club. So starting somewhere and just saying, we don't have to have a branding strategy, we don't have to have a communications strategy yet, and maybe we aspire towards that, but we don't have to have that yet. We just need to consider that our online presence for young people, when we look you up, it's just, do you have a presence? And that is your public image. So when you create it, keep in mind a lot of these things, because people that you have no idea about are going to be clicking on your Facebook page or clicking on your website, something like that. And they're going to see these things. So just keeping in mind that when we use the pronouns and that sort of thing, that it's attracting people who are, that we really want in that big tent. We want them to join. We want their voices there. So just making sure that our technology matches our intentions, like Danielle was saying. We don't have to start and not have a social media presence because it can't be perfect. It can't be Twitter or X and Facebook and a website and everything, and we need to fundraise before we have this whole strategy. Nope, it can just be something as simple as Facebook. So with my club, I just wanted to make sure when I was president that we had a club email, and that whenever we sent our meeting invitations out, it connected to that same one Facebook social media, and was connecting to that email chain. So those were the two things that I started with. And I chose not to use Instagram because we just didn't have enough members yet. And that was always something that we could expand upon in the future, but it's okay to start with one, with something, especially knowing how many options we have these days. So evidence shows, and if you go to the next slide, please. So evidence shows that Gen Z and millennials prefer to use digital to get news, and they trust it more as a news source. So this slide, you can see on the left-hand side in orange, Gen Z, in green, millennials, and I think Gen X and boomers, baby boomers in yellow. So this is a very large difference. So when considering how to advertise, consider a Facebook ad or a social media ad. A $25 spend will likely reach different eyes than the newspaper, which the newspaper is still great. A lot of people still read the newspaper, but when considering where to spend that money, if your intention is to attract younger members, digital is a great place to do that.
I'm going to talk a little bit about social media because, like a lot of my other Gen Z peers, I live on social media. Sad but true. It just because you started an Instagram account, that's halfway there. The other step to it is to have a sustainable and continuous presence. So when I hear of an organization, the first thing I'll do is look them up on Instagram. Instagram and Facebook too are great places to look at photos, events, what the club's doing, who's in it, where is it. It's a great way to kind of get that digital impression before I decide to commit and go to an in-person meeting. I want to know what I'm walking into first. That's why staying active on social media is such a big deal for Gen Z, because 60% of Gen Z think that digital impressions are more important than in-person ones. That means Gen Z members are actively judging the entire mission, infrastructure, activity, and image of the organization by just one click on a profile on Instagram or Facebook. That's why it's really important that your club tries its hardest to stay up to date and active on your Instagram. And it could be even as simple as simply taking a picture on your phone during a meeting and uploading it to social media with the caption, "Today's meeting was great. Make sure to join us for the next one on this day, where it is, what time." That's literally all it requires in order to show people who may not know or even looking at your profile that your club is active because you've posted within the past 2 weeks or month. Next slide.
It's our job to make things easy. There's a lot of things that are hard about what we do, and attracting younger people should not be one of them. We want it to be easy for young people to be accepted and just to have a space to show up. So of course, all of our clubs are going to benefit from an easier process, right? So we're encouraging you to do is when you're thinking about your annual plans, or when you're thinking about for 2024, which a lot of clubs are right now, they do that at the end of the year. Think about just saying that this is a priority, saying we would like to have more members. And success might look like 5 new members, or having an approach where we're going to ask our members to bring one young person with them. So one person they know from other meetings, one person they know from their personal life, or from one of their other organizations, one of their, maybe not their knitting club, but a lot of young people knit these days. So maybe their church, or maybe their at their friends' kids, something like that. Someone they know that's moved to town, where they're encouraged to bring one person and to try to have a relationship and get to know that person. But then also just saying, what does everybody in our club think about trying to attract younger people, so that everyone's on the same page? So because we talk about it in meetings, and it is easier to get things going than you think it is. We don't have to have a whole plan, A through Z set out in the beginning. We can just start by saying this isn't a priority.
Yeah, and one of those obstacles that we need to make it easier for people to join are the financial obstacles. And we have seen this not just in our clubs, but just in politics in general. It has always been far more accessible to people with more time, money, and connections. Those are 3 things that young people do not normally have in abundance. And financial barriers specifically disproportionately include Black and Brown people, young people, and working class people. So when we are removing unnecessary financial barriers to participation in our clubs, again, we're living up to our ideals as Democrats of having a big tent and being able to include everyone. And there are 2 practical things that I would really love to be able to see from the local clubs, but also from the women's club at large. I would love to see more clubs providing sponsorships for things like conventions, or for if you have a fundraising dinner. Some of y'all's fundraising dinners are $100 a pop. I mean, $100, if I'm doing the math, like I'm thinking, okay, how many hours of work is that going to cost me, right? In this economy, for a young person. So I think that having a sponsorship option where some of your more well-off members could check a box and say, yes, I would like to buy a ticket for a young person, whether it's on your paper form or your sign-up form, or if y'all have a wealthy donor who gives to your club and says, I want to buy a whole table, you should give those seats to young people. We're the ones who have a better chance of having a financial obstacle to getting to those types of events. And that's the same for our statewide convention. I had in my notes from when we did this panel last time that, it costs about $750, and that didn't include going to all of the meals. $750 for a young person could be a week's paycheck. So having something that's discounted or a sponsorship opportunity would remove that obstacle and allow more young people to participate. And having a discounted ticket, like for people under 40 or for students, and just ask them to bring a student ID if you like. Those are just really great ways so that we don't feel like the only place that we're welcome is when we're doing the work, but that we can also come to things where y'all are getting to know each other, y'all are getting to have fun. We get FOMO, fear of missing out, when there's a $150 or $100 ticket, and we get to see all of the pictures on your fantastic Instagram account, but we couldn't afford to go.
An additional consideration to removing barriers: consider everyone's ages, of course, when planning where your meetings are or where your event's going to take place. So someone who is in the Gen Z category, ages 10 to 26, so 26 and under, they might, if they're in high school or they're in college, they might have a car. So maybe we don't change everything immediately about logistics and how someone's going to get to these events, but just consider it. That's all we're asking, is just consider it. And if it's something that we can solve, let's do that. Let's make it easier for as many people as we can when we have a choice. How can we accommodate more people, especially young ones? So scheduling your meetings. If your meeting is on a Saturday, or it's on a Saturday, for example, during the day, you may attract more young people than during the school day or during the work day. More and more married people and those with, we need to have dual incomes. So a lot more people are working, even when they have kids. So, and then having kids on top of that for millennials and some older Gen Z, that complicates it even more. Just the scheduling and trying to have flexibility. Maybe we have, when we have a nighttime option, we have a daytime option, but just consider that, consider those logistics when scheduling things.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the social barriers that come with involvement in just politics in general for Gen Z and young people as a whole. We prefaced it earlier that this will be an uncomfortable process for y'all, but do keep in mind that your level of comfort will not nearly be as uncomfortable as some young people may feel putting themselves out there and walking into a space where they are usually or potentially the only person under 40 in a room. It calls for a space of inclusivity and understanding, right? So if I see a high schooler walk into my club meeting right after their first club meeting, I'm not going to go up to them and say, "Hey, you're young. Can you run our Instagram account?" Young people are not there to be your digital magicians, because as much as some would love to, we also want to make sure that we have a voice and are completely respected members of the club, not just a source of a potential benefit, just because of our age. One of the things that I would really recommend is the concept of a welcome meeting. So every time you get a new member, regardless of age, who sign up before their first meeting, whenever that may be, try to reach out to them and schedule a time to grab coffee, to chat, to go over the mission of the organization, what it looks like, what leadership potentially looks like, who they should know, what they should know. Because at Florida High School Democrats, we are very, very aware that some of our members are 14 years old. They just came out of middle school. How much political experience and know-how do you have when you're in middle school? The answer is nothing. And we are very aware that for a lot of kids, that this is their first experience into the realm of politics and organizations and kind of what that looks like, what an organization and a club looks like outside of art club at school. So we are very conscious of that, and that's why we have welcome meetings. It makes everyone feel a little more at ease, because when I walk into a meeting and suddenly Robert's rules are being used and people are talking about the agenda and minutes, it can feel really overwhelming and it can be really confusing. So just having a non-political, nice to meet you conversation ahead of time with new members can just eliminate some of that anxiety right from the get-go.
So I want to remind us all of those 3 big questions that we are tackling. Number 1 If young people are so politically engaged, why are they not here? Why are we seeing a lack of engagement? Number two, why are these young people not members of the Democratic Women's Club of Florida? And number three, what can we do to invite them to join us? And you'll remember that we're proposing a two-step process of embracing, which means supporting and accepting young people enthusiastically. And now we want to talk about the second part, which is empowering, making young people stronger and more confident, and also giving authority and power, especially in the case where someone is claiming what they have a right to. So when I was talking about our failures as a party, I mentioned that our relationship with young people can be way too transactional and that we need to start rebuilding that trust. And by investing in young people, we are getting to benefit from your immense learned experience. Like Rhea was just saying, when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, or even my age, 29 years old, I do not have the immense wisdom of living 50, 60, 70 years like some of you do. And that is really, really valuable. And so we want to encourage you all to foster time, not just to do the work alongside of young people, but to pause and build long-term relationships with us. And that makes us stronger and more confident because you're respecting our dignity as people. You're not just seeing us as somebody who can be your digital magician, but you're recognizing our humanity. And so I want you to think of a young person right now. Maybe it's somebody from your local Democratic Party. Maybe it's, one of your friends' grandchildren or children. And now I want you to ask yourself, quiz yourself a little bit. What is their partner's name? Like their boyfriend or their girlfriend? Do you even know if they have one? Where are they originally from? Did they grow up in Florida or did they move here? What do they do for a living? Right? So many of you might not know the answer to that question. And I actually found that some of the people that I've worked with in politics, that there was a time where I realized these people don't actually know my last name. They've never actually heard my last name out loud before I ran for office. And, that's when I started thinking I really need to be asking people more questions about not just what they do and not just what we're working on, but who they actually are. And so one of the ways that you can do that is have one of those welcome meetings, but don't just talk about the business. Get to know them a little bit, ask them questions about themselves. You could take them out for coffee and don't ask them to do anything. That's your challenge, is to just ask them questions about themselves, get to know a young person, and don't ask them to do anything for you during that conversation. You can leave that for later.
So, mentoring programs. If you have done this before, I'm sure that it has been very rewarding, but if you do not currently have a mentoring program in place, this is going to be my theme for, I hope, forever, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple. I was on the doors last year. I knocked doors. I was very busy as a volunteer and working a full-time job. So I know that we all in the Florida Democratic ecosystem have a lot of things that we need to get done, problems that we need to solve, a lot of things and not enough people that are around to do them. This is also another reason why a lot of young people are willing, but it's worth the investment. So we are willing. Now, I can speak on my own behalf because I didn't come from a political family. I don't have anyone that in my family or my sphere that's been involved in politics. So you are those people that's in my life that have guided me and given me the opportunity to be in a webinar like this or to take on a leadership role by just simply saying, I'll be there for you if you have any questions. That's why I said yes, because past President Monica Ritas said, I'll be there if you have when you have questions. And that I felt empowered to to take on something new and kind of scary because my career is also not politics, but I'm so grateful that I'm here. But it's because of women like Francine, Julius Edwards, and others, so many others that just have returned my phone calls or text messages when I didn't know how to do something, which is often when you do something new. And we need a lot of new volunteers in the state and in our clubs. So the suggestion of the coffee is such a great one. I do that as well now, because every time I ask a question of someone at a Democratic meeting, especially Democratic Women's Club events, whether it's local or in Miami-Dade, when I don't know someone and I just ask, oh, how did you get into politics? I'm amazed. Y'all were the ones who made a lot of these changes that we need to have made again. So we need you just as much as our organizations, and you need us right now, especially in Florida, but generally. We have a lot of things that need to be fixed, and you guys have done it before, a lot of you. So you've been through this before. So please, we need you just as much as you need us.
I'm going to talk a little bit about internships, and maybe this is not feasible for your club or the state at large right now, but it's always a goal to look forward to in the future to increase youth development. The benefits of an internship is that they are mutually beneficial. Whether they're paid or unpaid, high schoolers are always looking for volunteer hours, and so are college students, because in Florida, at public schools, you need at least 100 hours in order to graduate. So if you want to offer internships for volunteer hours, everyone needs them. There is no shortage of high schoolers looking to get involved who want volunteer hours, and they're a great way to draw people into the Women's Club. In terms of structure, what really works for you is going to be different club by club. We don't expect a uniform approach, but whether they're going to be at events or meetings, what are they going to do? And also looking at internships as a way to really shape a young person's experience in politics, their first experience in politics, and kind of build that pipeline to encourage leadership in the future. An intern that eventually will become a more active member, most likely, and then they could be potentially looking at leadership. So it is your job to use these internships to cultivate leadership, to cultivate experience, so that we do want to see more young leaders within politics as a whole, but internships are a great stepping stone to get there. So you're not just getting a young person, you're getting a young person who has experience and who knows what they're doing.
So that next part of empowering is giving authority and power. And what that looks like is passing the torch. It's a very human experience to cringe at the idea of handing your power to someone else, right? Think about a job or a role maybe you've had on an executive board, especially one that you worked really, really hard to earn. And now think about giving that to someone else, and it doesn't feel great, right? And I know that I am susceptible to this. I spent over a year and a half running for a congressional district. It is now a completely new election cycle, and I still call it my district, which is completely ridiculous, right? And as a club, as a state party, as Democrats, we have to reimagine our understanding of power and authority in a way that aligns more with our values. And our actions need to be, and hopefully you're getting this as a theme, right? That our actions need to be a manifestation of who we are as Democrats. And what this really gets down to is the fundamental divide between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans use their power to bully the weak, while we, Democrats, use our power to uplift the most vulnerable among us. Republicans dictate to others how they should live our lives, while we, Democrats, we free people to be their true selves. And Republicans use their power to abuse public trust, while we, Democrats, use it to make the government, our systems, work and serve all of us. So we have to remember that a core part of who we are as Democrats is empowerment. We are the party that empowers people to claim their rights to their personal freedom, claim their right to economic security, and claim their right to human dignity, no matter who they are. And when you step aside for a young person to assume a position of leadership, you are absolutely embodying your democratic values. And I said this at the beginning, but our future as an organization, our future as a party, it rides on making space for young people and including them. And any institution that hopes to survive over the next decade, whether it's political or not, must plan for the future. And that includes planning how we are going to identify and empower our future leaders. Because if we do not, and eventually those of us who are here are not here any longer, as is the case with every person, who is going to carry on the work that we are doing? And so instead of us fearing handing this power off to the next generation, we need to see it as an opportunity to secure our legacy as an organization, as a Democratic Women's Club. And we always, in the long race of life, it is a part of learning as a human being to identify and to be able to accept when it is time to pass the torch to those who have been walking with us. And in practice, what this means is we need to identify strong leaders, and then we need to prepare them to lead our clubs. So like Rhea said, that could be in the form of an internship. It could be in the form of mentorship. And I know that Brittany mentioned the great mentorship that she received from Monica Reedus and from Francine Julius Edwards. I have also been a recipient of those beautiful women pouring into me, and it prepared me and molded me and shaped me into the person that I am now, and continues to do so. And they continue to, even when I am in leadership positions in other organizations, they continue to, while I'm carrying a torch, they continue to impress upon me the importance of the work that we're doing. And I continue to lean on them. It doesn't just end when you pass a torch to someone else. And so while those of us who are presenting today are young, the day is also going to come when we also have to hand over the reins to somebody else who's going to come after us. And we want this organization to outlive all of us. And we have to focus on advancing our collective mission over our individual interests. And we are all a team. We are all working towards the same goals, and planning to hand things over to other people is acting like we are a team.
The Youth Council is a really exciting new opportunity that the party as a whole has been putting into practice in order to increase youth involvement. So we are made up of around 45 different representatives from organizations from the Florida High School Democrats, College Democrats, and Young Democrats, to organizations like the NAACP, the Divine Nine, Prism Florida is there, Florida Student Power, People Power for Florida, a lot of really great, progressive, prominent organizations with young leaders now get a seat in an advisory role within the party. It's really great news. It's a really great opportunity, and we're really excited about it. In terms of its potential application to the Democratic Women's Club, obviously we would be more than happy to potentially have a representative of the Democratic Women's Club on the Youth Council. That would be great, so that not only so that our caucuses are also taking a role in how the party approaches youth involvement in infrastructure, especially coming up to 2024. I'd also love to propose a DWC version of the Youth Council, one for your own, made up of progressive, prominent young women leaders from across the state to come into an advisory role. They can really, we did everything. We helped with everything from the little things like the new happy birthday graphic that the FGP always posts for when it's a legislator's birthday. That was us, because the old one was really ugly. And then to really big things like DECU student councils to be initiated at the county level for our high schoolers who do not have the luxury of starting a high school Democrats club because they go to private school, because they go to charter school, or because their school administration is just difficult. So that is about it on the youth council, and I'm happy to take any questions about that.
Yeah, and that does wrap up our session. We do have, it's actually 11 simple things your DWC can do now, and we did send that, will be sent out after the webinar. So you have a bonus one. We added one, so it's 11. And we'll be sure to send that out as well.
So you have it's easier to talk about in your meetings, on your board meetings. It's already ready. That's right. We're making things easy. One thing from the list, a couple things, ideas, take one of these and put it into YouTube or Google, and you have all of the resources you could possibly need.
Okay. Well, that was wonderful information, Rhea and Danielle and Brittany. And I see that concludes your presentation, and we're ready for questions. Now, I looked in the Q&A, and I do not see any questions from the guests that are, tuning in. So please put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. But in the interim, I do have a few questions for each one of you. Rhea, in the age group, in your age group, say 18 to 22 or 23, what specific issues are they very passionate about right now?
Yeah, definitely. So Gen Z, majority of Gen Z are currently students, whether that be in high school, college, or grad school. So a really big issue here in Florida especially is education. We're seeing attacks at every single level in high schools. That is things like the Don't Say Gay law. In colleges, it's bills like HB 999 to reduce diversity initiatives on campus and limiting potential majors and things like that. A bill was just filed, HB 49, to repeal decades-old child labor laws for high schoolers, which is insane. So it's definitely strong. A lot of Gen Z feel very strongly about their education and what that looks like on a broader sense. College Board there was a slight tussle between the GOP here and the College Board with regards to AP Psychology. That really impacts us because AP credits is how we pay less in college, and kids want to take AP credits. We want our education from our public high schools to be recognized to colleges, so we have a better shot of getting into colleges. So when things become personal like that, like I can't take AP Psychology because our Florida governor declared it not within Florida law, even though it's accessible to every other student in the country, that is very personal. So I feel like education and attacks on education are really big issues.
Okay, thank you so much. Here's a question from Joan Wekowitz. Is it easier for clubs to include young people if we meet by Zoom rather than in person in a geographically large county?
I would suggest doing a hybrid option if you're really large, maybe changing your location and trying to, not meeting in the same place every time, that if it takes an hour to get to one side of the county or the other. But there is no replacement for meeting people in person. And young people are terminally online, is what we would say. And it is so refreshing to get to talk to someone in person. And that has a much bigger impact on us.
All right, thank you. Here's a question from Stephen Blumrosen. Could you tell us more about the Youth Council? Like, does it go to middle school? Is there a progression in it like you were describing, internship, mentoring, and leadership? I guess we would revert to Rhea, that question.
Yeah, sure. So currently the youth council does not have any middle school members on it. It's more of a council in which every like prominent progressive organization in Florida like picks one person to go on it. Not so much as a town hall, and we kind of represent youth at large through that. I'm sure if there was a middle school organizer that Chair Fried would want to put on it, we would more than happily accommodate that. There's no way to, in terms of progression, I know that a lot of the youth council members who have gotten to their spaces and their leadership positions today have gone through an internship or a mentoring program. And a lot of the organizations that we represent provide internships and mentoring programs and like weekend community organization workshops. So I think that it is a very internship, mentoring, those things are very popular pipelines to create leaders that are then reflected in the youth council.
Okay. Now here's the question. They didn't identify themselves, but they ask, what age are the what ages are for the internships?
That would be up to your club. We just ask that, in order for it to be accessible to high schoolers, not to put like really outlandish hours, and being considerate of the ages that you're targeting, but internships are for everyone, regardless of age. And to very much clarify, like to make it accessible to high schoolers, that not only can you get potentially paid, but also a volunteer hours would be offered. So you can get that high school audience.
Uh-huh. Well, thank you. Okay, let me see if there are any more from, let's see, from the group. I know that as you were speaking, you had many, flowers and hearts and whatever. Everybody enjoyed the webinar. Here's one from Andrea Williams. She's the president of DWCF Titusville, and she says, "Great job. Sponsoring a table or seat to events is a fantastic idea, as the financial barrier can be a big hurdle. Getting younger members is the first problem to solve. Where do you think outreach to younger people?" All right, let me say, where do you think outreach to younger people to draw them into the club should occur? Social media, schools, local community events, etc. In other words, where can we actually go to do this outreach? And I guess that we could start with you, Rhea, and then perhaps if Brittany and Danielle have ideas and have used it. Do you have any ideas on this, Rhea?
Yes, social media is a big one. Schools, for high schools and middle schools, you're not going to be able to go onto campuses. That's a security risk. For colleges, that works a little differently. You would have to check campus rules on that. Local community events are a big one. Like, does your organization table at Pride, at your local Pride event? That's a really big hit with young people, and not a place I usually see democratic organizations reflected. Maybe elected officials are going and you tag along, so that if there's going to be tons of young people there, that's like a hot spot. So all of the above is my answer.
Okay, very good. Stephen Blumrosen wanted a point of clarification on that youth council. So before I ask questions of any of the other two, his question is the youth council DWCF or FDP? Who started the youth council?
The youth council is a task force by Chair Fried of the FDP, but it can definitely, the concept of a youth council can be applied to any organization.
Okay, All right, thank you. Christine Bright asks, are there any other important issues for college age students? General question for Brittany or Danielle.
I'll answer it.
All right, Danielle.
I actually just read a lot of, and I know that Brittany just read a lot of the exit polls from last year as well. And other than education, which obviously among college educated or college enrolled young people, but not all young people go to college. And in fact, less and less young people are electing to go to college because of the financial barrier of going to college. And some of those biggest issues are gun safety legislation, women who are college aged, about 65% of them are worried about being involved in a mass shooting, or someone they love being involved in a mass shooting, and something that they think about frequently, according to polling. And reproductive rights, access to abortion and reproductive care are also really big. And then just affordability in general, economic issues in general. And I will say that homeowners insurance, most young people under the age of 40 do not own a home. So if you are going onto a college campus, or you're talking to young people and your first message is, we need to fix a homeowners insurance crisis. I even own a home and I don't even understand it that much. So, you need to be really, depending on where you're going, if you're going to a college campus, talk about the education, talk about, safety, gun safety on college campuses. And just know your audience is really important.
Thank
Brittany,
you.
did you see anything else in that polling that you were looking at?
No, in fact, actually, we have to wrap up the questions.
Yes.
Just finish with a comment from Ruth Ann Richwine, who said, this was wonderful, informative, helpful, and full of important information. Thank you all. So yes, I agree with her. Thank you so much.
Brittany,
Danielle,
to add
and Brittany.
just really quick to that
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Well, very quickly. So it was from the question about other events. Something fun. That's fun for us too. That's fun for all of us. You know what's fun to me is being in the know, having my paperwork in order, not getting left out when it comes time to vote. And it's not sexy always, but we can show up to these events, to the car events, to the art walks. I've gone to art walk and I got 5 or 6 members just for $20 just because I said, join our political girl gang. Be a joiner. It can be fun, and it's fun for us too. And we have had a very serious few years. There is a lot on the line, I know, and a lot of problems to solve, but we need to bring the levity back. So that's all I wanted to add.
Well, that's a good way to end it. Thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you all. Elise?
Okay, there's a poll that's going to be launched. It's only 2 questions.
Okay, while we waiting on the poll, we'll get the results when we finish. Just wanted to turn it back over to Francine for final comments, and want to thank Francine for stepping in to represent President Forte Nemouge in her absence. And thank you for a terrific job, Francine.
Thank you, Chair Ransom. Persisters, we must learn how to pass the baton, teach the foundation, and then step back. Getting more young people to vote will be critical in this next election and all future elections. Although some people may believe Florida is no longer a battleground state, we don't think we should give up if we choose to play the long game. We want to thank Rhea, Brittany, and Danielle for their wisdom and advice, and each of you for coming to this webinar. By the way, DWCF officers will preside at the upcoming 2023 FDP convention at the Rosen Center in Orlando, October 27th to the 29th. As the DWCF serves as the Women's Caucus, the largest caucus in FDP. Registration has been extended to Wednesday, and we encourage you to also purchase a ticket to the gala on Saturday night. Our caucus meeting is set for Saturday afternoon, so contact me for the room and the time. And by the way, convention prep so that we can be prepared for this caucus meeting is tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And Elise, what are the survey results?
Okay, so on the first question, I don't see the first. Oh, okay. I will be able to apply what I learned today. There was 61% strongly agree, 25% agree, 11% neutral, and then 4% strongly disagree. One person out of the 28 that answered the poll, or 31. It said 1 out of 28. Okay, and on the second question, organization and delivery of content was effective. 79% strongly agree, 21% agree, which brings us to that 100% on that one.
All right, wonderful. So that wraps up our webinar tonight. And once again, the DWCF Training Committee thanks you for your time and your attention. And we hope that this information will be useful to you and your clubs. We will have the information up next week on our YouTube channel, and the follow-up list will be sent via email to all of the participants. So please share this with your club members, and let's go in 2024 refreshed and ready to increase our numbers and to bring home a win.
Yes, ma'am.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.